Howdy folks, this is Checkers, and these are my top 7 reasons that key bindings matter in games. And when I talk about key bindings, I mean the ability to remap keys to other keys on your keyboard, mouse, or controller. Let's get started. Number 7, defaults change. So, you may think to yourself that, well, I use the default key binding setting in games and it's always worked for me and it always will. But here's the thing. I am using the numeric keypad to move through Fallout 4. So numpad 8 to move forward, 2 to move back, strafe left with numpad 1, strafe right with numpad 3, and jump with numpad plus. And you may think to yourself, wow, this sounds like a crazy set of keybinds. But this was the default set of keybinds back in 1987 when I learned to play PC games on my very first PC. So what changed? Well, a new bit of technology came along soon thereafter. It wasn't completely new, but it was more standard, let's say. It was the mouse. So back when I started playing, mice were not common in games, and they were not what you would consider a standard option on PCs. But it came along as the case. So the default moved from the right-hand side of the keyboard where the mouse was, because using your left hand on the numeric keypad sucked. The keys moved over to the left-hand side of the keyboard and into that general WASD zone. It wasn't quite set in standard right away. I think it took a while to gel over there. But the key fact there is that the standard did change, and it was technology that changed it. And that technology, you may think to yourself, doesn't come along very often. Things just don't change that much. But ask yourself this. When was the last time you heard of someone talking about a VR game or a VR controller? Controllers do change, and defaults change with them. So, number 6, connection standards change. You may be thinking to yourself that I have a reprogrammable keyboard and I can just remap the keys wherever I want. But when I first started playing games back in 1987, my keyboard plugged into its PC by a 5-pin DIN connector. And, well, that was replaced by the PS2 connector, not to be confused with the PlayStation 2. This was an IBM standard. And later PS2 was overtaken by USB, and you've probably heard of things like USB-C and other things that may migrate on down to keyboards and change everything completely. So even the way you plug in your controller or your keyboard can change, and you're not necessarily defended by having a reprogrammable keyboard. There may be adapters and there may not be. There may be new reprogrammable keys if the standard changes, and it may take a while. So if that's your defense against default keybinds, you may find that it doesn't always work. Number 5, baked-in keys. So here's the thing. Very often developers will think to themselves, you know what? Key bindings are so easy. We'll just let it slide. We'll do it later. It's not important right now here at the outset. But the way games are made, you have different teams working on different projects. So they take bits of the main code and they pull it away to a branch. And when they're finished, they return it to the trunk. But if things aren't really planned out from the beginning, not everything returns in its proper form. So how do you pick a lock in Fallout 4? Go up to the lock, use it, mouse moves the bobby pin, and strafe left and strafe right should turn the lock, but numpad 1 and numpad 3 do nothing. Now, I didn't forget which key is strafe. Numpad 1 moves left, numpad 3 moves right. But to move the lock, well, these keys are hard-baked into A and D. I can't remap them, and, you know, it's not hard for me to move my hand down the keyboard, but I'm not everyone. And, well, you know, it can be a fairly annoying and even a fairly big problem, but we'll get to that. You may think to yourself that number 4, modders can fix everything, but they can't. They can perhaps fix it in the time being, but what happens when the company decides that they are going to patch the game one more time before they give up on it? And the modder who did that really cool Keybind mod stopped doing it. So the mod is broken, and there's no one left to fix it. You don't ever want to rely on modders or reprogrammable keyboards or reprogrammable controllers. You want this ability baked into the game. Otherwise, you may fly through the sky as something explodes near you. But otherwise, you may not be able to remap your keys. Number 3. You may think to yourself, this doesn't apply to me at all. I can do whatever I want. I work very well with the default Keybinds setup, but everyone gets injured. So you may burn your hand, you may break your hand, you may sprain your hand, you may just hurt a finger, you may hurt a thumb. And if you could remap those keys within the game, because you don't have a reprogrammable keyboard or controller because it wasn't important to you, but if you could just rebind a couple keys, you could play, and maybe this weekend, that awesome game that you've been dreaming about for years is finally going to release. Your friends are going to rush through that content. They are going to shoot up the sky. They are going to gain the levels. They are going to get the loot. And you are going to sit there and listen to their stories because you can't remap just a couple keys. And there's no mod for it because the game just came out. Problem. Number 2. Let's set aside all of the, well, I don't need it because I use the default stuff. Let's think about other folks for a moment here. What about special needs players? Because not everyone can use the default key setup, period. Not everyone can use the standard alternatives either. Not everyone can even use the standard controllers. There are folks with special needs who need special devices to play. And they really kind of also need rebindable keys to be able to use them. If you enjoy a game, if you find that games bring joy to your life, you should want that joy to be shared with as many people as possible. You should altruistically, ideally, want that to be shared with people who have special needs, who can't use the things that others of us can use. But even if you didn't want to look at it from an altruistic point of view, you should want everyone who wants to play to be able to play, because the more money the developers make from selling the game, the more likely they'll be to make more games, a sequel if that's what you want, or just another game from that developer that you love. And if you're a developer or a publisher, you want as many people to be able to buy and play your game as possible. And helping folks with special needs with the very simple task of rebindable keys could go a long way to helping you out, especially when people start talking about how awesome you are for your consideration of folks with special needs. And finally, number 1, the interface is where the rubber hits the road. How your keys work is basically how a player interprets, interfaces, interacts with your game. And if that experience sucks, your game sucks. It does not matter if you can do a handstand by a mailbox with one hand. It does not matter if you have built the most interesting, most fascinating, and most beautiful game on the planet. If people can't play it, it sucks. And the sales are going to hurt. And reviews are going to hurt a whole lot more. People are more able to refund games now than ever they have been before in the past. This is a crucial selling point. I have a stack of old games that I do not play because I cannot rebind the keys. I do not have any new games that I cannot play because I cannot rebind the keys because I refund them immediately. So, if you want to have maximum sales, if you want players to have the best experience in your game, you need rebindable keys. You don't just want them, you need them. It would be like painting a beautiful mural in a room and then throwing the cheapest work light you could find on the floor to light it. Yeah, technically, it does work. Is it the best experience? Does it best show your artwork? Your majesty? The wonder of your art? No. No, it really doesn't. Key bindings are not extremely difficult. It's one of the defenses developers use when they say, we're going to put it off until later. But as we've seen with number 3, that can lead to problems. Sorry, number 5. Baked in keys. Anyway, as I was saying, please, developers, we want to experience your game in all of its glory. Don't assume that the way you play it, the keys that you play it with, are the same as everyone else's. Please, please, you want to have rebindable keys in your games. Not just for my sake, for someone with special needs sake, not just for anyone else's sake, but for your sake as well, for your bottom line, and for the experience that you want others to have. Those are my 7 reasons why you want rebindable keys in a game. I would like to thank you very kindly for listening to all of them. I would like to point out that if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a small letter I with a white circle around it. These are cards and links to other videos that I've made. Also, I have a Twitter link in the description of the video and on my channel's main page. If you're on mobile, it'll be on my channel's About page. I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you found the video informative and maybe just a little entertaining. I would like to invite you to subscribe, like, and share if you so desire, and to ask you, above all, to please take care.